The morning sky was clear, a perfect summer day in the small town of Westbrook. Birds chirped. The sun was shining, and everything seemed ordinary. But the people of Westbrook had no idea that something extraordinary was about to happen. At all. Started when the first signs appeared, a bright light in the sky, moving slowly. But not like anything they had ever seen before. The object was large, circular, and emitted no sound. It just hovered there, suspended above the town. Some people thought it was a plane or a drone. But the truth quickly became clear. This was not anything Earth had ever made. The government sent helicopters and drones to investigate, but none of them could get too close. Something about the ship made them unable to approach. The ship stayed in place, floating silently, and as days passed, it became clear that it wasn't going anywhere. Among the citizens, one person couldn't help but feel drawn to the strange object. Ethan Thompson. He was an ordinary man, no different from anyone else in town, a 28-year-old mechanic, working hard to pay the bills and live a simple life. He had no interest in space or aliens until now. Something about this ship felt different to him. The ship wasn't just hovering, it was watching. Every time Ethan went outside, he would look up at the object. It was always there, high above. But there was one thing that caught his attention the most, a figure, a woman. Every time he looked up, there she was, standing at the ship's window, her eyes fixed directly on him. At first, Ethan thought it was his imagination. He would dismiss it as just the stress of living in such an odd situation. But no matter how many times he looked, she was there, always watching him. There was something in her gaze, a strange intensity that sent a chill down his spine. He couldn't explain it, but he could feel that she wasn't just looking at him, she was looking into him. He told himself it was nothing. After all, how could he possibly be special enough for an alien to notice? But that thought didn't ease the growing feeling inside him. He found himself going outside more often, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Days turned into weeks, and the ship never moved. It was as if the entire town had become part of some silent game, and Ethan was the only one who had noticed the stakes. The alien woman never took her eyes off him. At night, he would lie in bed and stare out his window, unable to sleep, knowing that she was out there, waiting. But what was she waiting for? One evening, he stood outside his house, staring up at the ship. His heart raced as he saw her once again, her face illuminated by the soft light from the ship. She didn't move, didn't blink, just kept looking at him. Ethan felt a pull, something he couldn't explain. It was as if the distance between them was shrinking, and he could feel her presence in his mind. She wasn't just watching him with her eyes. It felt as though she was watching his every thought, every feeling. What does she want? Ethan whispered to himself. He took a step forward, then another, before realizing he was walking toward the ship. It was an impulse, something beyond his control. He stopped himself and looked back at the town behind him, realizing how strange his behavior had become. Why was he so fascinated by her? He thought about going back inside, but the moment he turned his back to the ship, he felt a sense of loss. The thought of being away from her gaze left him feeling empty, as though something was missing. He couldn't shake the feeling that if he didn't do something, if he didn't get closer, he would never understand what was going on. The ship's presence had taken over his thoughts, his daily routine, and now, his every action. He was no longer just an ordinary man in a quiet town. He was part of something bigger. The alien woman, whoever she was, had made him part of her story, and he had no idea where it would lead. Night after night, she watched him, and night after night, he returned her gaze. But what did it all mean? What was she waiting for? Ethan didn't have the answers, but something deep inside him told him that he wasn't just an observer anymore. He was becoming part of the mystery, and as the days went by, he started to wonder if he would ever escape it. The ship in the sky wasn't just an object anymore. It was a presence, a force that had somehow connected with him. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The alien woman wasn't just watching him. She was waiting for him to make the next move. Ethan could no longer ignore the pull. Every day, the feeling grew stronger. Something about the ship and the alien woman had taken hold of him. He had tried to go on with his life, but it was impossible. She was always there, watching him. Every glance upward, and there she was standing silently in the ship's window. Her eyes fixed on him, she never moved, never looked away. It was as if she was waiting for something. But what? The people in town were becoming restless. Some claimed they had seen strange lights coming from the ship at night. Others swore they had heard strange sounds, like whispers on the wind. But nobody could explain what was happening. The authorities had tried everything to contact the ship, but it remained silent. There was no communication, no response. Ethan had been to the town hall meetings. He had heard the rumors and the speculation. Some thought it was a military experiment. Others thought it was an alien invasion. But Ethan knew deep down that this wasn't just about the ship. It was about her, the alien woman who never left the window, who never took her eyes off him. He couldn't explain it, but he felt drawn to her, as if she had some kind of power over him. Every night, after he finished his work at the mechanic shop, he would walk outside and look up. She was always there, standing in the same spot, gazing at him with an intensity he couldn't escape. The longer he stared at her, the more he felt that she wasn't just observing him, she was studying him, trying to understand him in ways no one ever had done. At first, he tried to ignore it. He told himself that it was just his mind playing tricks on him. But as the days passed, he began to feel that something wasn't right. Every time he looked up, she was there, watching him like no one else ever had. He had no idea why, but he started to wonder if she had some kind of purpose. One evening, as the sun began to set, Ethan decided to take action. He walked outside, a mix of curiosity and unease rising within him. He couldn't keep pretending that nothing was happening. He needed to understand what was going on. He needed to know who she was and why she was watching him. As he stepped outside, he looked up at the ship. It was as if time slowed. The ship was silent, but there was a presence about it that seemed almost alive. He felt a strange tingling sensation on the back of his neck, as if he were being watched, studied. And then, there she was. Her face appeared at the window, her eyes locking onto his once again. It was as though nothing else existed but the two of them. There was a strange connection between them, something he couldn't explain but couldn't ignore either. Her gaze was unwavering, yet somehow it was soft, almost welcoming. Ethan took a deep breath and tried to steady his racing heart. He had never been good with strangers, let alone aliens. But something in her eyes made him feel safe, even though he knew it didn't make sense. He stood there for a long time, not knowing what to do. He had so many questions, but none of them had answers. Was she waiting for him to speak, to do something, or was this just her way of being alone, like him? After what felt like an eternity, the sound of a car passing by broke his trance. He blinked and looked around, realizing how strange he must look, standing in the middle of the street, staring up at an alien ship. He quickly turned and walked back to his house, but the feeling of her eyes never left him. Inside, he tried to focus on his evening routine. He did his best to ignore the growing tension in his chest, the urge to return to the window and look up again. He couldn't stop thinking about her. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized something disturbing. He had changed. His mind kept drifting back to her. Her eyes, her presence. It was like he couldn't escape it. He was being pulled into something he didn't fully understand. He tried to distract himself by working on an old engine in his garage, but it was no use. He kept glancing out the window, hoping that she wasn't there. But every time he looked, she was always watching, waiting. As the days went by, Ethan found it harder to concentrate on anything else. He thought about her all the time. What was she waiting for? Why wasn't she leaving? What did she want from him? He started to feel like he was losing control. The more he tried to ignore it, the more it consumed him. And then, one night, when he went outside to get some fresh air, something changed. The moment he stepped into the yard, he saw her again. But this time, something was different. Instead of just standing there, watching him, she moved, just slightly. Her hand pressed against the window, as if reaching out to him. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time she had ever moved. It felt like a silent invitation, a call for him to come closer, to step into the unknown. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel scared. He felt curious. Something inside him urged him to approach the ship, to see her up close. But as he took a step forward, he froze. He didn't know what to expect, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that this was the moment everything would change. Ethan stood there in his yard, staring up at the alien ship. His heart raced, his breath coming in quick bursts. The moment she had touched the window, something inside him shifted. It was as if she had reached out to him, not physically, but emotionally. The simple touch of her hand against the glass had stirred something deep inside him, a feeling he couldn't explain. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel fear. Instead, he felt a strange pull, a desire to move closer. But as much as he wanted to, his legs felt frozen. What if this was a trap? What if getting closer was a mistake? His mind raced with questions, but his body betrayed him. Every step he took toward the ship felt like a step toward something unknown, something that was beyond his understanding. But there was no turning back. The connection he felt with her, this alien woman, was undeniable. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was calling to him, waiting for him to make the next move. Her eyes, glowing softly in the dim light of the evening, never left him. It was as if she could see inside him, through all of his doubts and fears, to the core of who he was, and it terrified him. Ethan slowly walked to the edge of his yard, his eyes never leaving the ship. The closer he got, the stronger the pull became. He could feel the weight of her gaze, a force that seemed to surround him, wrapping around him like a blanket. As he stood just a few feet away from the ship, he couldn't help but wonder how something so far away could make him feel so connected, so alive. The air felt heavier now, charged with an energy that wasn't there before. The space between him and the ship seemed to shrink with every passing moment. The silence was almost unbearable, the only sound the beating of his heart in his chest. He didn't know why, but he felt as though the ship was waiting for him to speak, to do something. But what? He had no idea what to say or how to break the silence that stretched between them. His mind raced with thoughts. Was she like him? Was she alone, just like him? Or was this all just a game to her? He had so many questions, but no way to ask them. For a long time, they simply stood there, locked in that strange, silent exchange. Ethan couldn't bring himself to look away, not even for a second. Her eyes were like magnets, pulling him in, making him feel like he was the only person in the world. And yet, as he stared at her, he realized he didn't know anything about her. Her silence spoke volumes, but what was she trying to tell him? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. As his foot moved, it felt as though the whole world shifted, as though every step he took was leading him deeper into something he couldn't fully understand. The ship's surface shimmered in the fading light, the quiet hum of energy vibrating through the air around him. He reached the ship's outer boundary, but there was still a barrier between them, a force field of some kind. He could feel it, like an invisible wall that kept them apart, no matter how close he got. Suddenly, the window in front of him began to glow faintly, and Ethan froze. The woman's gaze grew more intense, more focused, as though she was preparing for something. Ethan's heart beat faster. He wasn't sure what was happening, but it felt important, like he was about to learn something he had been waiting for all his life. He reached out, his fingers brushing the surface of the force field, expecting to feel something solid, something alien. Instead, his hand passed through it with no resistance, like it wasn't there at all. For a moment, he stood there, unsure of what to do. But before he could process what had happened, a soft voice filled his mind. "I've been waiting." The words were clear, yet there was no sound. They weren't spoken aloud. They were felt. A rush of warmth flooded his chest, and he felt an overwhelming urge to understand, to know, to be a part of whatever this was. Ethan took a step back, his mind spinning. Had she really just spoken to him? No, it wasn't spoken. It was like a thought, like an idea planted in his head. He was sure of it. He looked up at the ship again, searching for any sign of her. She hadn't moved, but her presence was stronger than ever, almost tangible. What was she waiting for? Ethan didn't know what to do. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. Was this the moment when everything would change? Was he really ready to connect with her? Part of him wanted to run, to walk away from this strange, inexplicable connection. But another part of him, something deeper, something instinctual, wanted to stay, to find out what she meant by her words, to understand why she was watching him. The minutes stretched on, each one feeling like an hour. His heart raced, but something inside him told him to wait. She hadn't moved. She hadn't said anything else. It was as if she was giving him space, waiting for him to decide. Ethan knew that he couldn't keep standing there forever. The choice had to be made. The moment had come. With a deep breath, he stepped forward again, more confidently this time. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew he couldn't turn back. As he moved closer, he could feel a pulse of energy, almost like a heartbeat, coming from the ship. It resonated deep inside him, matching the rhythm of his own. "I'm here," he whispered aloud. Not sure if she could hear him, but it felt right. It felt like the beginning of something he didn't fully understand but knew he had to see through. Ethan stood in front of the ship, feeling the pulse of energy that seemed to flow from it and into him. Every step he took toward the ship felt like he was walking towards something important, something he could no longer ignore. The alien woman, Lyra, had been watching him for days, and now he could feel her presence more than ever. It wasn't just her gaze anymore. It was as if she had entered his mind, as if they were connected in a way that went beyond anything he had ever known. He reached the ship's surface, still unsure of what to expect. His hand touched the outer layer, but unlike before, this time, it felt warm. Not hot, but warm, like the energy of the ship was alive. He pulled his hand back, and in that moment, the quiet hum of the ship seemed to grow louder, as if it were responding to him. The ship's surface shimmered again, and then, for the first time, a door appeared. It opened slowly, silently, revealing the alien woman standing inside, waiting. She didn't speak, but her eyes locked onto his, and Ethan felt a sense of calm wash over him. She wasn't just watching anymore, she was inviting him in. Ethan hesitated for a moment. He had so many questions, so many things he needed to know, but there was something about her, something about the way she looked at him, that made him feel like he had no choice but to trust her. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped into the ship. The air inside was cooler, but it felt strangely comfortable. The walls were smooth and metallic, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. As he moved deeper into the ship, he noticed that it was both advanced and ancient at the same time. There were no controls, no buttons, just a sense that the ship itself was alive, breathing, waiting. Lyra was still standing in front of him, her eyes never leaving his. He wanted to speak, but the words caught in his throat. It felt like there was a weight between them, something unsaid, something important. She didn't need to speak either. Ethan could feel it. She wasn't just looking at him. She was trying to communicate with him, to share something deeper. Slowly, Lyra raised her hand. Palm facing him, Ethan felt an odd compulsion to reach out. As if he couldn't resist the pull of her energy, he extended his hand toward hers, and just as their fingers brushed, a flood of images rushed into his mind. He saw her world, an alien planet, lush and beautiful, but empty. A once thriving civilization now reduced to ruins. He saw her people, elegant and powerful, their technology unmatched, but something was wrong. The people of her world, the Illyrian, had stopped reproducing. Their species was dying, and Lyra had been sent to find a way to save them. Ethan gasped, pulling his hand away. The images faded, but the feelings lingered: loneliness, desperation, and an overwhelming sadness. Lyra wasn't just an alien observer. She was a survivor, a last hope for her people. And she had come to Earth because she believed humanity held the key to saving them. I don't understand," Ethan whispered, his voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" Lyra's gaze softened, and she stepped closer, her presence almost comforting. She didn't speak. But the thoughts entered his mind once again. You are the answer. You, and others like you. Your species holds the potential to save mine. You have what we have lost. Ethan's heart raced as the truth began to sink in. He was more than just an observer. He was part of something bigger. His people, humanity, held a power that could help the Alarians survive. But how? And why him? Why was he the one she had been watching? He wanted to pull away, to leave, but there was no going back now. The connection between them, the bond that had formed, was too strong. Lyra was right. He could feel it in his bones. He wasn't just connected to her in some abstract way. There was something real, something deep between them. But what did that mean for Earth? What did it mean for him? Lyra's hand hovered over his chest, her fingers closed but not touching. Ethan felt the heat from her hand again, a soft warmth that seemed to radiate through him. She wasn't just asking for help. She was offering something in return, something he didn't fully understand. The images came again, visions of what the Alarian had lost and the price they had paid for. Their survival. They had used their powers to extend their lives, but in doing so, they had lost the ability to reproduce. The Alarian were dying, and they needed the genetic diversity of humanity to survive. Ethan stepped back, his mind reeling. The weight of her words, of her people's plight, felt like too much to bear. He had never signed up for this. He was just a mechanic from a small town. What did he know about saving an entire species? But Lyra wasn't waiting for him to figure it out. She didn't need to. She had made up her mind. You are part of this now, whether you choose it or not. The fate of my people is tied to yours. Her voice echoed in his mind. And as much as he wanted to deny it, he couldn't. There was no denying the truth in her words. He had felt the connection. He had seen her people struggle. And now, he was part of it. Ethan stood there in the silence of the ship, his heart heavy with the weight of what had just happened. The truth had been revealed, and there was no turning back. The alien woman, Lyra, had come to Earth to find hope, and somehow she had found it in him. Ethan stood in the center of the strange, alien ship, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The truth had been revealed. Lyra, the alien woman who had been watching him for days, had shared her people's story. They were dying, their race fading into extinction, and somehow humanity, his species, held the key to their survival. The weight of this knowledge was overwhelming. Ethan's mind raced with thoughts, but none of them seemed to make sense. He was just an ordinary man, living in a small town. He wasn't a scientist, a leader, or someone who could save an entire species. Yet, here he was, standing in front of an alien who believed that he, and people like him, could help save her dying world. Lyra's presence was calming, but it also made him feel small, insignificant. She was nothing like any human he had ever known. Her eyes, glowing softly with an intensity that seemed to pierce through his very soul, told a story of desperation and hope. Ethan looked down, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't know what to think, what to feel. The offer was tempting. She wasn't just asking for help. She was offering something in return. But what exactly did she mean? What did she want from him? Lyra stepped closer to him, her movements graceful, like she was part of the ship itself. She didn't speak at first, but the silence between them felt heavier than any words could be. Then, her voice, soft and clear, filled his mind again. You don't need to be afraid, Ethan. You are not alone in this. My people, we are willing to share everything with you, everything we know, everything we have. You can have knowledge beyond your world's understanding. You can be a part of something bigger than you ever imagined. Her words were gentle, but they were full of power. The way she spoke made it seem like an offer he couldn't refuse, like it was something that was meant to happen. His heart raced again, not in fear, but in excitement. Was this the chance of a lifetime? To be part of something greater than himself, to have knowledge, power, things he couldn't even dream of? He took a step back, trying to make sense of everything. What would this mean for his life? He was just a mechanic. His world was simple. But now, it was anything but. He could feel his life shifting, moving in ways he couldn't control. He didn't know if he was ready for this. Lyra's gaze never wavered, and it was as though she could sense his doubt. She reached out slowly, her hand resting gently on his arm. In the moment her fingers made contact, something inside Ethan shifted. It was like a spark igniting deep within him, filling him with warmth and a sense of purpose. "I know this is overwhelming," Lyra's voice whispered in his mind, "but you must understand. The survival of my people is in your hands. We need your help, Ethan. You are the key." The truth of her words sank into him like a heavy stone. She wasn't just asking for help. She was pleading. The desperation in her voice, the urgency in her actions, was undeniable. But why had she chosen him? Why him, a simple mechanic? He had no special skills, no hidden power. Lyra sensed his confusion and smiled gently, though it wasn't a smile of comfort, but one of understanding. "You don't know yet, but you are more than what you seem. Your species, your biology, is unique in ways that you cannot yet comprehend. We can show you what we know, teach you what we have learned. Together, we can save both our worlds." Ethan felt his heart beating faster. It was a tempting offer to tempting. The thought of becoming part of something bigger, of helping to save an entire race, was almost too much to resist. But in the back of his mind, a voice reminded him of the danger. Could he trust her? Could he trust this alien woman who had been watching him for so long? "What exactly do you want from me?" Ethan asked aloud, his voice trembling. His mind was racing with questions, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What is it that you need?" Lyra didn't hesitate. She stepped even closer, and for the first time, Ethan noticed the sadness in her eyes. Despite the power she seemed to radiate, there was a deep sorrow there, an emptiness that spoke volumes. "We need your DNA, Ethan, the essence of your humanity. Your species has something we lost, something we can't recreate. We need your genetics to survive, to rebuild. Without it, we will cease to exist." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the stomach. He hadn't expected that. DNA? That was what she wanted. He wasn't sure what it meant exactly, but it didn't sound good. This wasn't just about saving their species. It felt like something else was at play. Something more complex. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion and fear. Could he really help them? Could he really be a part of something so massive? And if he agreed, what would happen to him? What would it mean for his life, for Earth? Lyra must have sensed his inner struggle, because she stepped back, giving him some space. "I know this is difficult, but understand, this is not just about saving us. This is about saving your future as well. The Illyrian can offer your people knowledge and technology beyond your wildest dreams. You will be part of something greater than anything you've ever known. The choice is yours." Ethan looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision. The offer was everything he had ever dreamed of and more. But at what cost? The silence between them grew long, the tension thick in the air. He had to make a choice, and in that moment, he realized that there might be no going back. Ethan stood in the quiet of the alien ship, the weight of Lyra's offer heavy on his shoulders. The room seemed to close in around him, the walls glowing softly, pulsing with an energy that matched the beat of his heart. He couldn't deny the attraction, the temptation that her words brought. Knowledge, power, the chance to be part of something beyond his wildest dreams. It was everything he had ever wanted. But then there was the cost, his DNA, his humanity. The more he thought about it, the more the price seemed too high. How could he possibly give up something so personal, so crucial to who he was? How could he allow an alien species to use his very essence to survive? He wasn't sure he could live with that. Lyra, standing before him with her soft, knowing gaze, seemed to sense his hesitation. Her eyes never left his, and for a moment, they just stood there in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on both of them. Her presence was calming, yet intense, as though the very air around them was charged with an invisible current. "I understand your fear, Ethan," she said softly, her voice like a whisper in his mind. "But you must understand, this isn't just about you or me. It's about survival. My people have no other choice." Ethan's chest tightened as he considered her words. What she was saying wasn't just about her. It was about an entire species, one that had watched their civilization crumble, unable to reproduce, struggling to find a way to stay alive. He understood their desperation, but could he really be the answer? Was he ready to bear that responsibility? But what about me? Ethan asked, his voice shaky. What happens to me if I agree to this? What will I lose? Lyra took a step closer, her expression softening. You won't lose everything, Ethan. You will still be yourself. But you will also become something more. You will be a part of something greater than anything your world has ever known. You will have the knowledge and power to shape the future not just for my people, but for yours as well. Ethan shook his head, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Was it really worth it? He was an ordinary man, a mechanic. What could he possibly offer that would change the fate of two species? He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had worked on engines and machines all his life. Could they really hold the power to save a dying civilization? As if sensing his doubt, Lyra gently reached out and placed her hand on his. The warmth from her touch was soothing, yet it carried an intensity he had never felt before. The moment their skin touched, Ethan felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just her warmth. It was a connection, a bond forming between them. It was as though something deep within him was awakening, something he hadn't even known existed. He felt her emotions flood through him, loneliness, hope, desperation. It was overwhelming, and for a moment, he was lost in the depth of her feelings. He could sense her desire, not just for survival, but for a chance at something more, a chance to rebuild what had been lost. You are more than just a solution, Ethan, she said, her voice now echoing in his mind. You are the future. Together, we can create something that will last, not just for my people, but for yours too. The connection between them deepened, and Ethan found it hard to think clearly. His heart raced, and his head spun with the possibilities. This wasn't just about helping an alien species anymore. This was about shaping the future of humanity, a future where Earth and the Alarian could work together, combining their strengths to build something incredible. But there was still a part of him that was afraid of losing himself in this connection, afraid of becoming something he wasn't. What would he be giving up in exchange for the power and knowledge that Lyra offered? What would it mean for his identity, his sense of self? He pulled his hand back, his chest rising and falling with each breath. He had to think this through. He couldn't just jump into something so life-altering without fully understanding the consequences. I need time, Ethan said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. I need to think about this. Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her eyes soft with understanding. She stepped back, allowing him space to think. I will give you the time you need, Ethan, she said gently. But know this, the offer will not always be here. Time is running out for my people. If we wait too long, it may be too late. Ethan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. Time was something they didn't have much of. The Alarian were running out of options, and he was the key to their survival. He didn't know if he was ready to make the decision, but he couldn't ignore the truth. As he stood there, torn between his fear and the allure of Lyra's offer, he realized that this wasn't just about helping her people. It was about choosing who he wanted to be. Would he remain the man he was, a simple mechanic? Or would he step into a new role, a role that could change the fate of two worlds? Lyra waited patiently, her presence both calming and intense. She had given him time. But how much longer could they both wait? Ethan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He didn't know what the future would hold. But one thing was certain. His life was never going to be the same again. The decision was no longer just about survival, it was about embracing the unknown. And whether he had the courage to walk that path, Ethan stood alone inside the alien ship, the decision before him weighing heavily on his mind. He had never felt so torn in his life. The offer Lyra had presented him was tempting beyond words. The chance to save her people, to unlock knowledge and power that no human had ever imagined, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. But with it came the fear of losing himself, the fear of what might happen to him, to his humanity. If he agreed to her terms, he looked at Lyra, standing silently before him, She was waiting, patient as ever, her eyes full of both hope and desperation. He could feel the connection between them, a bond that seemed to grow stronger every time they interacted. But as much as he wanted to trust her, to believe that he could make a difference, part of him was terrified of what might happen once he crossed that line. Lyra, sensing his hesitation, stepped closer. "You don't have to be afraid, Ethan," she said, her voice soft and comforting, yet firm. "I will never force you to do something against your will, but understand this: my people need you. Your world needs you. If you turn away now, both of us will be lost. This is our only chance." Ethan's mind raced, the weight of her words pressing down on him. She was right. Time was running out. Her species, the Illyrian, had waited for so long, and now the future of both their worlds depended on him. But how could he make a decision like this? How could he know for sure that this was the right path? He thought back to his life before. He was just a mechanic, an ordinary man with an ordinary job. He had never asked for any of this, but now, standing before Lyra, he realized how much his life had already changed. He wasn't the same person he had been before she arrived. The pull between them was undeniable. The bond they shared was real. "What happens if I say yes?" Ethan asked, his voice quiet, unsure. He needed to hear her say it again, to understand what he was truly agreeing to. Lyra's gaze softened, and she reached out, placing her hand gently on his chest. "You will become part of something greater than you can imagine. The Illyrian will not only survive, but we will thrive. You will gain knowledge beyond anything your world has ever known. We will share everything we have with you, and in return, we will share our future." She paused, her eyes searching his, as though looking into his very soul. "But more than that, Ethan," she continued, her voice almost a whisper, "you will never be alone again. You will always have a place in my world, in our world." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him as her words washed over him. He could feel the sincerity in her voice, the truth of her words. It was hard to ignore the depth of her emotions. She wasn't just asking him for help. She was offering him something far more intimate, something beyond what he had ever imagined. But was he ready to give up his life on Earth? Was he ready to step into the unknown, to become part of a world he had never known? He looked down at his hands again. These were the same hands that had fixed engines, repaired machines, and lived a simple life. Now, they felt like they were part of something much larger, something that could change the fate of two worlds. Was he ready for that responsibility? Was he ready to give up his humanity for the sake of another species? Lyra waited, her eyes never leaving his. She didn't speak again, but the silence between them was filled with so much unspoken understanding. She knew how hard this decision was for him. She knew the weight of what she was asking. Ethan took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment. He thought about the life he had here on Earth, his friends, his family, his simple life as a mechanic. It was all he had ever known. But in the past few days, that life had started to feel smaller and smaller, as though he were living in the shadow of something much greater. He had always wanted to make a difference, but he had never imagined it would come this way. Finally, he opened his eyes and looked at Lyra. She was waiting for him, her expression filled with hope and patience. "I can't say I'm not scared," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I know one thing. I can't turn my back on this. I can't ignore the chance to change everything. For you, for us, I'm willing to take that step." Lyra's eyes lit up, and for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph, but one of deep relief. She reached out, her hand cupping his face, and for a brief moment, the connection between them felt complete. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "You don't know how much this means to me. To us, you've just given us a chance to survive, to rebuild. You've given us hope." Ethan nodded, his heart beating faster than ever. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he knew that he had made the right choice. He had crossed a line, stepped into the unknown, but he was no longer afraid. He was ready. Lyra took a step back, her hand still resting on his arm. "The process will begin soon," she said. "We'll need to connect, to share what we are. Together, We will make this work." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized what she meant. The connection would go deeper than anything he had ever known. But he was ready for it. He had made his choice, and there was no going back. As Lyra led him deeper into the ship, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. The journey had only just begun, but he knew one thing for sure: his life was never going to be the same again.